we are live and welcome to Teaching Tip Tuesday. My name is Michelle. I go by the Ignited Teacher on social media, and that will be Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So thank you for tuning in tonight. And what I do on Teaching Tip Tuesday is I help math teachers of struggling learners to effectively manage their classrooms and to increase student achievement. And I do that through math instructional strategies like the ones that you will hear about tonight, and response to intervention, project-based learning, classroom management strategies, and instructional technology. And if you are new here, thank you for tuning in tonight. And if you are a regular who follow me on Facebook, thank you for tuning in and showing up to watch my live streams every night. Every Tuesday night. So thank you for that. And I want you to know, if you cannot catch me live and you miss a Teaching Tip Tuesday, because life happens and we are busy people, trust me, I know about busy. You can always catch my live streams on YouTube, where they are housed there as long as my YouTube channel exists. So you don't have to worry about missing a live stream. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's The Ignited Teacher. You can search it on YouTube and subscribe, and my Teaching Tip Tuesday videos are always housed there for your convenience and for your reference. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with tonight's Teaching Tip Tuesday. So one of the things that I kind of want to lead into with tonight's Teaching Tip Tuesday, I want to basically talk about, instructional strategies. Now, Facebook, Twitter, and um, all of these platforms have become very good connectors and professional development for teachers who don't have that type of support. One of the things that I noticed, that teachers sometimes don't have the support, not because the school does not provide it, but sometimes teachers are at small schools, rural schools, that don't have the support that they need because they are small. I've been at small campuses where I was the only fifth grade math teacher for years, and then I've moved to another school district where I was the only sixth grade math teacher. So it's really difficult to collaborate with other educators, in a sense, because you don't have them there. And Facebook and Twitter have been some really good platforms to help teachers who don't have the support, or even first year teachers who are looking for support and don't have a mentor. They can connect with teachers who they would not be able to connect with without Facebook or Twitter. But with that said, there are some pros and cons to finding instructional strategies and using them verbatim for teachers that you don't know the demographics of their classes. And there are several different issues that can arise from taking an instructional strategy that actually you have not really vetted. So tonight's topic is about how to choose an instructional strategy that works for your tier 2 and your tier 1 students. Your tier 1 students are those students that are on grade level, and your tier 2 students are the students that may not be on grade level. I always refer to them as those almost children. I almost got it. They almost there. So those are your tier 2 students. And notice I didn't include tier 3 students because your tier 3 students are really, if you're following the response to intervention model, it's really the responsibility of someone else to service your tier 3 students. But in reality, we know that that doesn't always happen. And I can say that because it didn't always happen for me. I just knew that my responsibility are tier 2 students. However, I did have a goal for my tier 3 students, and that was just to grow really beyond where they were when I first got them, even as a general ed teacher and now as a math interventionist, because it's really hard to move your tier 2, tier 3 students because a lot of your tier 3 students still carry labels, special ed kids, but you want to have some goals set for them as well. But this segment is really focusing on tier 1 and tier 2 students. Now, let me scoot over. So, the question that I always see pop up in Facebook groups is, how do you introduce this? Tell me a strategy that I can use for this. I'm starting math intervention. I need an instructional strategy for this. So when I hear those, the question that always pops up in my mind is, what about the curriculum alignment? So that's the first part of choosing an instructional strategy for those tier 1 and tier 2 students. So your tier 2 students are pretty much on grade level. You may have some above grade level kids that are going to get it. So when we talk about instructional strategies, the way that I look at instructional strategies is 9 times out of 10, my tier 1 kids are going to get it on the first time out of the gate. That first day that I generally, depending on how difficult the skill is, they're generally going to get it. So when I look at instructional strategy, I look at, does it meet the curriculum alignment? So does it meet the curriculum alignment? So here we are with the dividing a whole number by a fraction. Now, the curriculum says that we have to use a number line and tape diagram. So I knew that my students were going to do well with the tape diagram because they've seen it before and it's very pictorial. But I knew that they were going to struggle with the number line because measurement models my students didn't do well with. But this supports the curriculum alignment. And it's a part of our alignment. So a lot of teachers, like with this rounding, I think I did a segment maybe a couple of weeks ago about the 4 more, raise the score, 5 or less, let it rest. That does not support the curriculum alignment. And that's just one example. Butterfly method in 3rd grade does not support the curriculum alignment. So those strategies definitely would not be strategies that I would recommend that you use, because the first thing when you're looking at an instructional strategy, does it support the curriculum alignment? That means, can a teacher come behind you and put her teaching without having to reteach the kids and then put her teaching on top of it? And that has been my experience for the last, I want to say, 6 or 7 years. I've had to get buy-in from students to make them release these other strategies, replace them with some curriculum alignment and vertical alignment appropriate strategies, and then teach the grade level content. So that's one issue that I've had for, like I said, the past 6 or 7 years. So the first step in actually choosing a strategy is, does it support the curriculum alignment? Is it part of our vertical alignment strand? Now, I know some people are saying, well, sometimes all the strategies don't work. And I get that. But there's several strategies to different skills. And a lot of times when strategies don't work, which leads me to my next point, is do your students have the prerequisite skills for the strategy? So problem solving. Now, I had a read, draw, write problem solving strategy that was foolproof. I had used it for years. My last year in elementary school, which I taught fifth grade, I couldn't use it. I ended up having to go back and actually teach the students using thinking routines, and this was one of them. I had to collaborate with the reading teacher because my students had huge deficits in reading. And this was one year that I sat down and actually talked to her and looked at each of the students' reading levels. What I found out is that when students read maybe at a 3.5 or 3.6 reading level, I found out that they could actually, with being oral admin, they could actually pass a test and really understand it. Anything less than that, the students were struggling with that, and that is a fifth grade test. So we did is we went through and looked at each student's reading level, where they were. So what I did is compiled a list of kids that I knew that could do the problem solving because they had the cognitive ability, and the reading levels may have been low, but they could think, and I could move them along with this making inferencing. And I used to tell them that reading is thinking. And that's really what it is. It's all those processes: analyzing, synthesizing, understanding, explaining. Those are all reading strategies, to where if your students do not have those prerequisite skills, they will not be able to execute problem solving. They just will not. And that goes for any instructional strategy. So if you're trying to think about or trying to choose an instructional strategy that you can use to either introduce to your students or either for math intervention, you need to ask yourself, do the students have the prerequisite skill for the actual instructional strategy? And I know a lot of teachers love, like, oh, I love partial quotients and I love partial products. I get that. But students who don't have the foundation with place value, they are not going to do well with partial quotients and partial products. And I'm not saying that those are not good instructional strategies. What I'm saying is, if you're planning on introducing that as your initial instruction, but your students struggle with place value, I can tell you right now, your lesson is more than likely it's going to fall flat. And you're going to find that they're not going to make the connection, because those math skills are supposed to build. And if there's a hole there with the place value, they're not going to make it. They're not. So what you're going to have to do is end up scaffolding the actual instructional strategy and front loading it with the prerequisite skill for your actual instructional strategy. That's why when teachers are in Facebook groups and saying, well, I'm going to start with this, but have you, first of all, looked at the curriculum alignment? Have you thought about, do your students have the skill set for this strategy? Because a lot of times they don't. And then, I've seen at the end of the school year with these standardized tests, teachers saying, well, I taught it, but did your children, and it's not that did they learn it, did they have the skill set for the way that you taught it? I'm not a huge fan of those room makeovers and all these little cute things, because it's becomes a lot of times a distractor for kids. It really is. And I know that teachers try to make, things fun, but that's really not the goal. I can say that I have found a way to make math interesting. Fun lasts 2 seconds. If you have children, personal children of your own, you know that you can take a kid to amusement park and the fun lasts all of 20 minutes. But interesting things will hold children's attention, things that are happening, current events, things like that. So, you have to really choose a balance between those cute things and things that are going to stick with your students. But that moves me to my next point. Have you analyzed your student work? Analyzing your student work will give you the knowledge that you need for your students to know them. Like you know them academically, and then you build a relationship with them. Analyzing student work is the outcome of the teaching. A lot of teachers I know, they don't even really look at the student work because the student work will give you the clues that you need to either refine a strategy or use a different strategy. For example, with this was an instructional strategy that I use with my students. And it's the work that, I had, was in their interactive notebook. But at the bottom, you could see that this child really understood how to generate those equivalent fractions, because there's only two ways to generate equivalent fractions. One is through division and one is through multiplication. That is it. Either you're simplifying or you're multiplying. So that's just it. There's no other way. But if you're not looking at your student work and looking at what those higher level kids are doing in comparison to your kids that may be tier 3, and looking at some of those things that you would like for your tier 2 students to do, or there may be some things that your tier 2 students do well, like articulate their thoughts, that those higher level kids don't want to do, because that had always been my struggle with them. They did not want to articulate their thoughts. They just wanted to write down stuff and be done, because that's how they're programmed, and not really being intentional about their learning. Because a lot of kids in elementary, they are programmed that way to, I got to be fast at it. That's not what I'm looking for. It's not. But you need, when choosing an instructional strategy, and I'm going to go back to the first part, is it has to support the alignment, curriculum alignment. It has to support that vertical alignment for that skill. Vertical alignments don't go through every grade level. Sometimes a vertical alignment may start and stop at 2 grade levels. It might be taught in the grade level before, and at your grade level, that is the end. So that means that the curriculum is expecting the children to master it. And if it does not extend to that next grade level, that means that student has to know it leaving 5th grade. And I know some teachers may say, well, they come to us behind. That's why I included the tier 2 students. Those strategies that you introduce to your whole group, if you're using a strategy that doesn't work for the children and doesn't support the curriculum alignment, you're going to find yourself in your small group changing the whole strategy, because you're going to find out once you're close up that the strategy didn't work for the tier 2 students. Rather than finding an instructional strategy that supports the curriculum alignment and the students have the prerequisite skill for it, and when you get to small group, all you're doing is maybe adjusting the instructional strategy for the student instead of throwing it out. And if you do that stuff on the front end, you won't have that issue in your tier 2 in math interventions. One of the things people say, well, we're supposed to do stuff differently in tier 2 on our small group. They didn't say throw the baby out with the bathwater. They said do things differently. That means adjust the strategy so that the student can grasp the concept. It's going to be different from what you did in your whole group lesson. For example, sometimes like with division, I teach division whole group, and our district says, oh, you have 2 weeks to teach division. I know that's not going to happen. Teaching division is a year-long process, and some kids get it at the 19th hour. So I already know that's something that I'm going to have to work on. Now, the way that I present it in whole group, I don't present it like that in small group. Small group, I would take my students back to one-digit divisors, and sometimes I take them back to grouping and understanding repeated subtraction. But I use the same instructional strategy, but I scaffold it enough to where the students can get it, because I've done all the chugging and plugging on the front end and vetted all my instructional strategies. And the last thing is analyzing student work. You cannot ask for instructional strategies in a group without saying, my students are struggling with this. Do you have a strategy that will help them with this? Or based on my students' work, I noticed that they're struggling with this. So you have to be specific about what you're asking for, and knowing your students is the first thing. You have to know what they need, because what you're going to find yourself is hitting your head up against a brick wall, and you're going to be frustrated because you haven't vetted those instructional strategies before you actually implement it. You're taking somebody else's demographic and actually applying it to the students that sit in front of you. So in the description, I have a blog post about the curriculum alignment, and you can find this blog post at fuelgreatminds.com. That is my website where I house all my blog posts. And it talks about it being a guide for curriculum alignment. If you're a first year teacher, new teacher, or new to the grade level, new to the profession, new to the content, it's a good place for you to start. Your curriculum alignment is actually what you need to follow. I know I hear a lot of parents say, well, y'all just teach to the test. Well, I have to teach first before I can teach any testing strategy. It doesn't work like that. I have to get some skills and concepts, and that's where we get that from in the curriculum alignment. So let me scoot over. So I hope that you enjoyed this Teaching Tip Tuesday. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave it in the comment section below on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and I'll respond. And if you're on Twitter, you can tweet to me. But remember, if you need to revisit this segment, you can always catch it on YouTube. At the Ignited Teacher, you can do a search in the search bar on YouTube. And I have some other different Teaching Tip Tuesday ideas on there and topics. And you can subscribe to my channel and definitely hit the bell notification so that you know, like when my Teaching Tip Tuesdays go live, it'll alert you to the live stream. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you all next week for another Teaching Tip Tuesday. Bye-bye.